Hello, hello everyone on YouTube. Hello everyone joining us is session 2.3 and we're dealing with part 2 of bouncing back from failure. I'm going to wait a little bit and wait for you to all come in and then we can start our session. We've got a lot to talk about today. Welcome, Kiamokhetsu. I can see you. Everyone, please join me on YouTube, on Instagram. We are live and we are talking about bouncing back from failure. Oftentimes, people think it's only a certain group of people who fail. But let me tell you something. Anyone can fail. Anyone who's human experiences failure in their lives at some stage. And the issue is not whether you experience failure or not. The issue is how do you deal with failure when it happens? Because failure will happen. Failure will happen. And the issue is how do you deal with it? And what we're doing in this part 2 is to talk about how do we deal with failure. And what we're going to do is I'll be sharing with you some of my stories. So call your people, abondaba bonke, babize beze la endlini, because I'm going to be talking a little bit about my story, a little bit about how I dealt with my setbacks, my career setbacks. And I say career setbacks because we all have plans in life. You plan that you're going to do this and that and that, and then you're on top and you think you're going to the next step, and then a disruption happens, and then you're derailed. And that's what the world calls failure. And that's what we're talking about bouncing back from. How do you bounce back from that situation? You were set to go forward, either to graduate within 4 years, like we heard from Sa last week, or to get your degree, or perhaps to become vice chancellor in another university overseas. And suddenly, without a plan, you are derailed, and then you've got to recalibrate and move forward. And we're talking about that recalibration. Do you sit and cry and say the world is not fair and wallow in your sorrows? Do you stay at home because you're embarrassed what the world will say, what everyone will say, that everyone will say you messed up or you could have done this or that? And that's what I'm talking about today. How do we make sure that we do not fall back and disappear after setbacks, disappointments, career derailments, study disturbances, exclusions, stuff like that? I see some people are joining us from Soweto, from Deep Blue, from Midlands. Thank you very much for joining us, Everett, and everyone else from Soweto. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm hoping that university students are joining us from every campus, because in fact, this is a critical time on campuses. Soon you'll write your first semester exams, and some of you can already see that the ship is sinking. And what happens if the ship sinks? What happens if you don't do well? Well, here's the thing. I had a career made in heaven. I mean, as an academic, I worked so hard. You know, you grow up poor, you struggle, you're not the brightest in class, and you nail it. You make sure. I mean, I made sure that I do everything by the book and make sure that I achieve everything. I wanted to get a rating. Before I even got a PhD, I was going to workshops for how to apply for a rating as a scientist. I was publishing, I was going to conferences, I was speaking, I was being called everywhere at some stage. And then I didn't even want to jump steps in my career. I didn't want to become vice chancellor before I became deputy vice chancellor. I didn't want to become deputy vice chancellor before I experienced being a dean. And I always said, I don't want to jump a step, because when you jump a step, then you don't know. So I played by the book. I thought I need an experience of running a faculty before I become a deputy vice chancellor. And I was right. it came in handy when I became a deputy vice chancellor at UNISA, and I did 5 years, and I said, I've got experience in a non-research intensive university. I want to go to a research intensive university. And I said, I'm going to UCT, and I got to UCT to become a deputy vice chancellor in June 2016. And 2017, January, I started my tenure as a deputy vice chancellor for research and internationalization at UCT. And the whole world was celebrating. I was B2 rated at the time. I was published. I had chaired international studies. I'd done everything. In fact, I was the most qualified DVC in the country. I knew it. I did a presentation to be DVC. It was never recorded and live streamed. I think that's one of the best presentations I had made. And I remember the question for the interview was, what do you think the job requires and what do you bring to the job? And I talked about a university as being a place for ideas and what I would bring as Deputy Vice Chancellor for Research and Internationalization to a place of ideas. And I challenged, in fact, at that time, it was 2015, 2016, during the Fees Must Fall, I challenged the state of universities at that time that we're losing credibility and how we can take it on and what the role of the DVC research and internationalization would be and how I would do that. It was amazing. I was competing with 4 people, one of whom just got a job as a deputy vice chancellor as a vice chancellor for Stellenbosch. He was one of the 4 people who I was competing with. I mean, I felt that I had done my presentation. I remember the vice chancellor of UCT at that time, Dr. Max Price, walking out with me out of the presentation hall and said, "You were excellent." I knew I was excellent. So I didn't, jump into the train, para, because I had experience 12 years at Vets as an academic and a professor, and I went to UNISA. I had been a dean, and I'd been a deputy vice chancellor. I dean for 3 years and a deputy vice chancellor for 5 years. When I applied to UCT, I had done already 1 round as deputy vice chancellor, and I knew exactly why I wanted to be vice chancellor again for a 2nd round at a different university. I wanted a research intensive university because I wanted an experience as an executive in a research intensive university. So my career moves were well curated. So I got the job, and I promise you, the environment was hostile from day one. I mean, the first accusation before I even finished 6 months was that my PhD needs to be investigated. But whatever, I went on. And 2017, they advertised, 2018, the beginning of 2018, they advertised for a vice chancellor. I didn't apply the first time the advert was put up. They advertised the 2nd time, I didn't apply the 3rd time, and I remember a certain professor who I wouldn't call by name, he passed on, he died by suicide, came to my office and said to me, he was sent and he's there to ask me to apply to be vice chancellor. I'm not mentioning his name because I don't want to offend the family, but he died on my day number 27 as vice chancellor. That's when he died by suicide. He's the one who came to my office and said to me, Black people sent me to ask you to please apply to be vice chancellor. And I agreed after a long conversation. He said to me, we will support you. We will support you. We know you can do this. You've got all it takes. The university needs you now. And I said, are you sure Black people will come behind? He said, absolutely. And I was there. And I applied. I remember that I clicked off my application on the closing date of the advert. I sent it off and it went. And I went to the interview. And the presentation, of course, you do the presentation first, and the presentation was live streamed. And I remember that I was competing with another woman, Black woman professor, who was deputy vice chancellor at her university as well. And the presentation was live streamed. I was prepared. And if you go online right now, you will find the presentation. I didn't think I would get the job because I knew I wasn't a favorite in the university. Many people didn't want me, even as DVC. But I had gone into that application with the confidence that that professor who died by suicide convinced me that I will get the support. I did my presentation. You'll see when I do my presentation that I start by unpacking the topic, and I say I give 3 gazes to the topic that they had given me, and I give my view, and I literally tell them what I would do if I got the job. And to be honest with you, I did exactly what I told them. Transformation was top of mind. Improving the university ranking was top of mind. Making the Black marginalized students and staff feel that is their university was top of mind. Those were the 3 things I wanted to do. And I moved on with that in the university. And I did all I could, you know. I was focused on stabilizing the university. It was in the middle of shutdown after shutdown. If some of you would remember, the exams actually were written in tents on the rugby field. It was bad. There were security guards with dogs guarding students as they were writing exams. Imagine the trauma and the anxiety in the midst of, you're anxious about the exams and still you're surrounded by police dogs to write an exam. I took over after that situation. I took over a situation like that. So it was tough. So my priority was stabilize the university, get it back onto the rankings that it fell off on, particularly the business school and the university, get it up there. And thirdly, drive transformation with integrity. And people will remember that the 3 pillars of my vision: excellence, transformation, and sustainability. I maintain today that that's the best you can do. You drive excellence with integrity. You drive transformation with integrity, or excellence that's inclusive, transformation with integrity, and you will get sustainability. They've got to work together interchangeably, well, interdependently, I explained. And I drove that. I worked hard to make students feel included. I went to reses during weekends coming from the gym to make sure everyone feel it. I challenged people. I called people to order if they were not going to class, if they were not delivering, if they were, just doing things that will not get the university back on track in the 3 things: stabilizing the university, getting it back on the rankings, and driving transformation with integrity. And I did that, and I thought, I've got it right. It wasn't easy, it was tough. Every day I was on stage, I was qualifying. As if I don't qualify for the job, I was working hard to qualify for the job. Very stressful. I was starting at 4:30 latest in my office, leaving at 8:30, being accused of a whole lot of things, that I'm abusing university funds because I was using Uber. I refused to have a driver, so I was going, when I'm tired, I would take an Uber X. And they were saying I'm abusing university fees, university funds. I was like, forever under scrutiny. The way I dressed, my hair, my makeup, my earrings were an issue, right? But I kept focused. And I told myself, this university needs me now. And I've got to do what's needed now. And that's what I did. People wonder, why did you go to laboratory? I did that because I felt that that's what students need. Now, when I got a second term, it was a celebration. I was excited. And I thought, I'm not going to do all the 5 years. I'll do 2 years and I'll go to another university. I was hoping to go to another university overseas and be vice chancellor. And so when I couldn't do the second term, I got 78% at Senate vote to get a second term, and council voted and agreed for my second term. They even published a notification that I'm going to be starting a second term in 2024 or 2024, yeah. And boom, the minority of minorities said never. And they started pushing and they pushed. And I finally decided I'm leaving the university. You can imagine, that's a setback. That's a derailment. That's what some people would call failure. But for me, it wasn't failure. It was a huge challenge, right? I didn't think it was a failure. People thought I'm going to disappear, lie low, never to be seen. But I decided I'm not going to do that. And that's why I'm talking about bouncing back from failure today. I'm not the only one who's experienced a setback. Many people do. And I'm talking about this because I want you to know that these things happen to all of us. If it's never happened to you, it's still going to happen. If it never happens, then shame, you don't have real success. And I said last week that the first thing that you need to do is own your story. Hold your head up, own your story. Reflect on what is it that you could have done differently that led to the failure. And I decided to own my story. I decided to keep my head back. If some of you recall, I decided the first 3 months I was publishing a gig guide, what I called a gig guide. First of all, I wanted to communicate that I'm alive, I'm active, I'm not dead. That was just a temporary delay, but I'm still on track. I'm still an educator, I'm still a thinker, I'm still a change maker. And I continued to do the presentations. I continued to teach, to develop like I knew. So you want to own your story? I looked back and I thought, of course, I could have stopped and not try to discipline the director of communications at UCT. I could have stopped and not suspend her. I would have been fine. I could have agreed to what Professor Natras and Professor Seekins were saying, that I should withdraw the university statement about a paper that we said was racist. I could have withdrawn the executive statement and apologize to them and say, no, the paper was not racist, and I would have been fine. But I decided not to. So in a way, when I reflected, I thought, what went wrong? What went wrong is that I failed at leading upwards. And leading upwards is leading people who are similar to you, not because of position, not because of qualification, some of them not because of experience. But people, when you are in a leadership position, you lead up and you lead down. And the people leading up means understanding how to lead people who are more powerful than you are. People who are more powerful than you are will deal with you if you don't do what they want. So you have a choice. You can decide to lead by principle, like I did. I decided I'm going to lead by principle. I don't care that they're above me. I'm not going to bow down to them, to what they want. I'm going to do what I believe is right. And I did that, right? But that has got consequences, and you must live with the consequences of your choices. If your choice is to lead by principle, then you must live with the consequence. The other choice, of course, is there. The people who are high, above, or up, who are not up by position, by qualification, or by whatever, but by privilege of whiteness, or by power of material or connection or whatever, you don't discipline them. When they call you to order, you back off. That's if you choose to do that because you want to stay in the job and you want them to protect you. They will protect you. I refuse to do that because I was leading by truth and principle. So here's the thing, you got to understand that. So I was reflecting, what went wrong? Why should I shouldn't have done that if I wanted to stay. But you want to you lead by principle, then you must face the consequences of principle. And that's it. But the consequence of principle is you get derailed. And then of course I negotiate with the university, they pay me millions and make a lot of concessions that I don't talk to you about. Benefits that I will enjoy until I die. Because they just wanted me out of the institution, because the powerful people didn't want me in the institution. That's why they paid me. Otherwise, had I had done something wrong, they would have charged me, disciplined me, and fired me. So I'm owning my story. My story is I could have acted differently and preserved myself. I could have focused on self-preservation. I focused on principle and truth. And that's when you reflect. You reflect on, why am I where I am? And thereafter, you ask for help. You remember last week we had Misa who talked about how we ask for help. And I decided to sit with my family and say, what do we do next? Do I look for another job? Do I hide? And we sat down and we said, we keep going. They said, we keep going, Mom. You do what you do. And some black business person called me and said, I want you to come and work with me. And I went to work with them in May 2023. And it's been amazing. It's been amazing. I won't tell the detail of that, but I'm talking about bouncing back. So did I have help? Yes, this business person helped me, because you know, when you have experienced a setback or a failure, you shouldn't sit in bed and sleep and cry all the time. It just makes things worse, right? So sometimes you need, when you ask for help, that's when you need people to hold your hand and walk with you, right? And remember, number 4, I said, have a high capacity for shame. And a high capacity for shame is when you understand shame doesn't mean that you are useless. It doesn't mean that shame you should not be scared of shame. So having a high capacity for shame means that you've got to understand that this is where things are, and you can't do otherwise. So those who laugh at me, let them laugh. I'm here. I felt like I'm in the middle of the street, undressed, and everyone is watching. And having a high capacity for shame is saying, here I am. Whoever laughs can laugh. So having a capacity for shame means ignore the opinions of others. It is the people who are going nowhere, who always have a lot to say, who always know what's the thing you should have done, who will criticize you and say you are that, you are that. Do not listen to them. Know that you are experiencing, and by the way, the higher the position, the bigger the setback. My setback was public. Journalists took joy at writing about it. And members of the public, the losers, the jealous and judgmental people, enjoyed it, because losers like to see other people losing. Losers celebrate when successful people experience setbacks. So, when I say have a high capacity for shame, I'm saying be ready to face the losers, because the losers will talk. They will try to pull you down. Do not listen to them. Do not listen to them, because they want you to fail, and they want your failure to be massive, because it will make them feel good. I know that I experienced a lot of support from a lot of people. But I also experienced, even today, there are people in WhatsApp groups. Someone in a WhatsApp group said to me, I see that you are doing farming. I'm waiting for you to fail, because Black people never succeed in this. And I said to him, and this is a WhatsApp group of highly powerful people. I think it's more than 1,000 people. Someone, a Black person with a position, saying they are waiting for me to fail. And I said to him, you know, even if I were to fail, I'm no longer going to fail simply because you said that. Because every time I get the urge to give up, I'm going to think of you. And I cannot give up. I will not give up. So you should use the losers who want you to give up, who want you to fail, as a motivation to move forward and keep going. And that's the reason why I shared my gig guide online for 3 months after I left UCT, so that the losers, the jealous and judgmental people can see that I'm going on. But note, guys, they didn't stop. Some of them called the people who would have invited me and said, why are you inviting her? Cancel, or we are not sponsoring. So there's lots of organizations, a few of organizations that had to pay me, and I didn't go because their donors said they don't want me. And I said, well, I booked, you gotta pay. But if you pay and I come, I'll give you value for money. So the losers are going to talk. You should keep going. And that's having a high capacity for shame. You must be resilient to shame. Shame should not make you fall. Okay. Every successful person has had a setback, a disappointment, or a failure. And the reason you call them successful, the reason you call them your role models, the reason you're following them, the reason you respect them is because they owned their story. They reflected on what went wrong, what they could have done differently if they wanted to stay in that position. They asked for help, and they faced the world in the midst of shame, in the midst of judgment by losers. Now I want to talk to Malakisto. I'm going to ask Lucky, indodana yolahleko. Indodana yolahleko is a very interesting story. Malakisto, I'm going to ask you to request to join my Instagram story, and then I will accept you. So please press join. I hope you know how to do that. It's a plus sign just next to the comment, and I will call you in. Okay, I'm going to look for you. I want us to talk to Lucky, because Lucky is a young person. He is from Mpumalanga. Lucky is from Mpumalanga. He's one of those young people who got sterling results at matric. He was celebrated. He comes from a squatter camp in Mpumalanga. He will say exactly where. And Lucky was celebrated when he passed matric. And his family thought, this is the guy who's going to take us out of poverty. I'm sure the neighbors also thought, this is the guy who's going to take us out of poverty, out of our misery. And he went to vets. And not many people make it to vets. But Malakisto made it to vets, guys. Malakisto, welcome. Yebo. So, let me tell people a bit, because I want before we start talking, because I want to say, you were excluded twice. You were addicted to weed and alcohol. You were on the streets, but as we're talking now, you're back at school and you have your single coming. And I love the song. And I would like you to play the song before I ask you questions, because I want us to talk. But I want people to hear the song. And I'm hoping as we do this, some music producer out there is listening, some promoter, somebody is listening, and gets as impressed as I got when I heard the song. Can you play the song a little bit?
Let me see if I can try and play it. I have a technical issue with my laptop here.
Okay.
So I was playing like where it said like.
So we're going to hear from Lucky. Besides the song, he's back at school, but I'm going to ask him first to talk about how he is owning his story. Lucky, of course, is my sister's adopted son. And so him and I interact a lot. And I've been talking to him. I think this year I've given him so many lectures on owning your story. Owning your story helps you to keep your head up. Owning your story is what helps you wake up, because you say, Yes, it happened. But Oksalayo, I got the job of the Vice Chancellor of UCT, competing with other people, and I beat them. They had a choice. They chose me because I was damn good. If they had another candidate, if the other candidate was better, they would have chosen them because I wasn't necessarily the favorite with conservatives in the university. They chose me, right? They cannot change the fact that I'm the 10th Vice Chancellor of the University of Cape Town. They can't change it. They can't change it. And the fact that I led the damn university for 4.5 years, they can't change that. And by the way, I got a B1 rating just after being appointed. I got a B1 rating because I was active researcher all along. And so the issue is they cannot change that. And they cannot even take away the lessons I learned, the network I built, and the strengthening. I came to UCT with a name and a brand, but being there also enhanced my brand, right? I'm waiting for Malakisto to get ready. Are you able to play? If we're not, we should go on.
Yes, can we please go on? I tried playing it on the background, but I can see the sound is
no
not
problem. At the end you can play. So I want us to hear Malakisto, because what we're talking about is that when you're experiencing failure, there's also an experience in that you grow. So Malakisto, tell me about your song. I mean, this is a moment. Okay, before then, let me start with this. Where are you studying at the moment?
Currently, I'm at CJC Central Johannesburg TVET College. I'm doing studio work, which is mostly based in music, where you're equipped with technical, theoretical, practical knowledge in order to become a sound engineer as well as a music professional.
Fantastic. So Lucky is doing that now at Central TVET. And whilst he's doing that, you also produces. But I have to say, of course, you are also killing the course. I mean, you're getting good grades, right?
Definitely I am.
You're getting distinctions. I mean, we are back to celebration mode. The song is also a song about your life.
Yes. So the song is more about it's a prayer song in a way. It's a prayer for hope, for everybody who's out there, who's going through a lot in life and they feel like they are pushing but they are not getting where they want to get to. What I'm trying to say to somebody out there who's at a verge of giving up, when they are about to actually get that blessing, when they are actually about to get what they really want, but they do not see it. I'm saying it, you must see it before you get it. Then you vision it before you get it. And when you vision it before you get it, then you are in a spiritual realm where you're able to have that high power to get it in reality.
Fantastic. So Malakisto, this is amazing. I mean, someone is saying you are now studying what you are passionate about, and I know that because I know that. I've seen you since my sister adopted you, and we'll talk a little bit about that. I hope you're open to that. That every time we talk, you always talk about media, music. Even when I say to you, but Malakisto is late, you're too old for music, you still stick to it. And I'm trying to poke holes into to see how passionate are you about that. And someone says, well, it's because now you're doing something you're passionate about.
Yes.
Before you got to the Central TVET, you were at another TVET studying boiler making.
Yes, I was at, I forgot the name of the TVET college.
The private TVET in Braamfontein, yeah.
Yes, it's JIT College. It's actually JIT College, Johannesburg Institute of Engineering.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what it's called. I was doing boiler making there. I remember I did my first year in 2023. I think the issue I had with it was not just the course that I had the issue with, but it was also financial exclusion. I was financially excluded, which meant that I couldn't attend even some of my classes. And that's when it started hitting me again, you know. I went back to smoking, I went back to drinking, trying to deal with the whole issue.
I want us to talk about the story of drinking and smoking. But here's the thing, Malakisto. You know, these days, none of the black people will agree that the course child them academically. Everybody claims financial exclusion. Let me tell you, Malakisto, mina nginemali bengizokubhatalela. Ngikubonile phela when you were studying there. Bengizokubhatalela. You are my sister's adopted son. I was there when the course was showing you, when you were not showing seriousness, you were you were you were not getting anything right. How can I pay? I wasn't gonna pay you. So people must start owning. I mean, boiler making and media, like chalk and cheese, right? Like welding. Boiler making bazalwane, it's welding. Very needed skill. But I promise you, we used to sit with my sister and I would say to her, do you think Malakisto is gonna do boiler making? When I say to him, what are you gonna do with this course? I would ask him. He would tell me, I remember one day you were telling me about billboards. Hey, you see these billboards, ma? Those billboards are put there by boiler makers. I was like, whoa, he likes boiler making and a lot. Also, in some billboards, people who do boiler making, they do big stuff. People who are passionate about boiler making. So there's something about passion there that I see now that you're doing music that I didn't see when you were doing boiler making. That's the truth.
That's very true.
Serious. Mina bengizokubhatalela ngabe ngiyayibona ipassion le boiler making. I told my sister, I'm not going to waste my money on this, guys. Your child, you will see how to finish. I need to warm top strategy.
Yeah.
So
no, that's very.
Yeah.
I was about to say that's actually very true, because sometimes when you are doing something that you really not passionate about, you don't put in as much effort as you do to something that you are really passionate about. So I think change came in when you started talking to me about owning my story as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, accepting who I really was, because I think I had a problem accepting myself as a musician. You know, I had people had so much expectations of me coming from high school, and I'm a top learner. They had expectations that you become an engineer, you become you do something very, very important in the industry. So being a musician for me was never something I thought people would look at me and say you can become a musician, but it's something I actually found as I was walking in life, and I realized this is actually what I'm passionate about. This is what's burning in my heart. This is what I really, really want to do. But it was hard to accept it. I didn't know how people would accept it as well.
Malakisto, let's talk about your addiction. Because when you left in Mpumalanga to come to Gauteng, you had never smoked weed, right?
Not at all.
Were you drinking alcohol already?
Not at all.
So you came.
I was not smoking.
You came to Johannesburg as a clean, highly achieved matric graduate to join one of the top universities on the African continent, University of the Witwatersrand, which many young people could not get. How did you get into weed? And you were studying computer science, right?
Yes, I was doing computer sciences.
How did you get into weed?
Then I think let me take it back a little bit when I started with the course. I think it also had to do with the drive, with the passion, that when I started doing the course, it's not what I thought it really was, because now I'm coming into a big institution from a school where they expect me to be doing engineering, electrical engineering, either civil engineering or something like that. So there were so much big expectations on me. Then I did computer sciences, which I was not really passionate about. Then along the way, I found out it is really, really not me. And I started failing as well. And even though I was passing a few modules there, but you magnify that small failure that you have, you make it so big, makes the course, it makes everything seem wrong about what you are doing. It makes everything seem wrong about the course that you are doing. So I was looking at that as a reason to actually drop the course. And I eventually did. I dropped out on my first year I was already looking
Malakisto,
for a job.
let's pause there. We must be clear. We mustn't mislead people. Did you just drop out or were you excluded?
You know what I did?
Yeah.
I remember I wrote my June exams,
Mm-hmm.
and then after I wrote my June exams, I came back September. I was not attending classes anymore.
You were already smoking. Were you already smoking?
No, not at that time.
Okay.
So I had already given up. I had already felt defeated because
Wow.
of how I felt about the exams and how I was failing as well. So I dropped out, started looking for a job. I couldn't get a job. Then I remember I dropped out. I went home end of the year. Then I came back next year knowing very well that I was excluded.
Wow.
Came back looking for a job. I didn't tell my parents what was happening. You know, they thought I was still in school. But at the time, I just wanted to get a job. I just wanted to pursue music, which is what actually I felt is something that I wanted to do. But I was doing all this and I was not telling them the truth. You know, they thought I was at school.
And there are so many young people who are doing that, who have already dropped out. They don't tell home that they've dropped out. January they go back to school, and but actually they are not going to register.
They are not going to register. It happens everywhere. It happens everywhere, trust me. So
yeah, go ahead.
I remember I was not registered and I got kicked out of the campus because I think the campus found out that I was not registered. I didn't even have money to go back home at that time. I remember the security guard gave me 50 rands. I had to go to my cousin, which was the nearest place I could go. I took a taxi to my cousin. I just told him schools were closed, you know. I was just lying all the way out. Told him that schools were closed and stuff like that. Then from there, I went back home. And from home, they asked me about school. You know, it was bad. It was really terrible, especially lying to them that, okay, now I'm financially excluded. And I'm not telling them, actually, I dropped out. I didn't even write my final exams, you know. So they took that. And when that happens, you don't even want to be at home because now you are in shame. Your teachers, your neighbors, your friends will ask you questions and you eventually have to lie about what you are doing and what's happening. So I remember I decided to relocate. I moved to Pretoria. You want to move to a new place. You want to move to a place
where nobody knows your name.
Nobody knows your name. You want to start afresh, you know? So I did that. I moved from home. I went to Pretoria. I started working in retail. But I'd always tell myself, I want to go back to school. I want to go back to school. And the money also traps you when you are working. And what happens is that you have so much time on your hands. And with that time on my hands, that's when I had friends. I started drinking. I started smoking. And I wouldn't say that it's my friends who influenced me to start drinking.
You made the decision.
I did it all by myself.
Yeah.
I made the decision. Yeah. So I wouldn't say they forced me.
Absolutely.
So with that, so I got addicted along the way with that. But I would always tell myself, I want to go back to school. I want to also make sure I pursue music because I felt like time is running out now, you know. And I remember I moved to Joburg again. When I moved to Joburg, I continued working. And I remember when I was working, at some point, this is before I became homeless. I decided, you know, to cut everything. I decided to cut friends. I decided to cut the work. I told myself at some point that I'm going to pursue music. I'm going to go at it. I'm going to knock on doors. I'm going to go everywhere. And I did just that. And it came with a whole lot of baggage. It came with a whole lot of burden on me because now I was under pressure, you know.
We don't have much time, Malakisto. I want us to move, right? So nothing was working. You're pursuing music. You go to music record companies. You sleep at the security gates. Like you told me, you would like sit there and wait for someone to listen to you. And nobody was giving you the time of day.
Nobody. They just saw a young person who needs to go back to school.
Yeah.
So eventually, I remember I took a bus inside the campus. I went to vets.
Yeah.
As I was homeless at this time, I blended in with the students, but I was homeless at the time. I had nothing to eat. Money was running out. I had nothing left on me, but I was happy that I had a roof on my head rather than sleeping outside, because I remember how
You
it
were sleeping in the toilets at vets.
As I was sleeping in the toilets at vets,
So some of the students sleeping in the toilets at vets are not students. There are people who are no longer registered. Malakisto was one of them.
Yeah. You could say
they need help. It's students who need help. Yeah.
There's a lot that's happening that you never see, but it's happening.
Yeah. And then tell me, and then you ended up in the streets. That's when you were on the streets, homeless.
Yeah, before I came into vets, it's when I was homeless. I left everything. I left my job. I decided to pursue music. And I realized that things were not working out. When they were not working out, I was homeless already, because I told myself, if I'm not going big, I'm going home.
Yeah.
I never went big. I never went home, but I went homeless, and that's when I decided to go to vets and find shelter there. And I remember at some point I didn't have food. It was weeks now. I hadn't eaten in so many days. I would go around the campus asking students for food. They didn't know I was homeless, because I would just play around and say, can I taste this? Can I taste that? Can I please have this and that? And they would let me have that, not knowing that I was homeless. At some point, I was eating from a dustbin, and I saw nothing wrong with it. Students would throw food away. I saw nothing wrong with it. Up until a point where I met your sister. I remember there was one night when I was just sitting in the library. I was listening to a sermon. And after listening to that sermon preaching, I prayed and I cried. I made a wish. I said, God, I wish I can be adopted by white people.
Oh, the joke of wanting to be adopted by white people at home is a big joke, eh? Yeah, but then you were not adopted by white people. You were adopted by a single black woman. And here's the thing. I mean, you thought it's only if you are adopted by white people that life will be better.
Things would be better.
Yeah, and then you were adopted by a black woman, and then you lived with her, but you were smoking weed, and she didn't know, because we don't know what the behavior of weed smoker is.
Yeah, I think the issue also is not being able to deal with the root cause. Sometimes as much as people as they can try to help you, you need to go back. You take steps back and say, "Oh,
why am I here?
This is where I went wrong.
Yeah.
Why am I here?"
Yeah.
So I think that's the thing that really messed up along the way, because I didn't tell you guys, okay, this is who I was before I met you. I used to drink, I used to smoke, I used to do this.
But Malakisto, it's not like you used to, because I remember that I would be visiting my sister and I would say, "Where's Malakisto?" And he would say, "Oh no, he went for a walk. Kanti Malakisto has gone to smoke." And of course, you know how weed is. Malakisto was so chilled, never making noise, never whatever, And so parents, I mean, it's interesting. That's why parenting is so important, because it took so long. Because my sister would tell me, like he did this, he can't do this and that. It's weird. And I remember one day we were sitting and she said, and this young man, Kheti, got distinctions in matric in Mpumalanga. What's wrong with this matric? That a child who got this can't do this or that or that. Can't you know when he's asking you to do that, you are high, either on alcohol or weed. She's thinking, because there's something wrong with the matric in this country. Why can't she do this or that or that? And now we sit back and we say, Malakisto has improved so much. I mean, clearly weed was doing damage or alcohol was doing damage, because now you are like a completely new person.
Yeah. I think it took me going home at some point
when
you guys had to send me home.
Yeah.
So I realized it's more about also, where you are born is
Yes.
where your roots are. So I had to
Yes.
go back to my roots,
Yeah.
and find out that as a tree myself, there's been my roots have been tempered upon. I need to work on my
Yes.
roots. I need to cultivate myself.
Yes.
You need to remove the weed. You need to remove that. So when I went home, there was support from family. I told
Yeah.
them, this is what I'm dealing with. This is what's happening. I had support from family. I had support from church.
Malakisto, let me respond. I see someone is complaining that the weed is not sitting me well. Listen, weed treats people differently. There are people who smoke weed and they are fine. They can function, they can do everything. Nothing. It does. These things don't treat people the same. Weed was not kind to Malakisto. And Malakisto and young people, don't be misled. Weed doesn't do the same things to everyone. Some people will be executives and they still smoke weed and it's fine. But there are people, some of who will smoke weed and it thinks the wheels come off completely. Some will function for a while, but not 100%. And with Malakisto, it didn't do well. And I have to say that because loudmouthed people will now start a campaign against me because I'm saying weed didn't do you well. It didn't. And I thank God that you have found yourself. Because now, and by the way, you went home because I remember sitting with my sister and I said to my sister, you have to take him home. You have to take the young man to his mother. Because if anything happens whilst he's with you, they're going to blame you when you are trying to help. So take him to his mother, let his mother know what's going on, and let him find himself at home. And let him struggle a bit. Let the home realize that, and it worked. Because then you got home, you touched the ground. And then you came back a completely different man.
Yeah, no, it helped a lot. I don't want to lie, it helped a lot. I think one thing we try to do when we are dealing with a whole lot of failure in life, we try to run away from the situation. But the most important thing is actually to face it.
Yeah.
Because we because of shame, we look at people who look at us and they say, what happened to this guy? He shouldn't be here. He should be doing something big with his life.
Yeah.
So you find yourself under a lot of shame from neighbors. You can't even look at them. You don't want to even communicate with your teachers. You don't want to talk to your friends because now they had so much big expectations on you. But I think it's you going back to tell them, hey, it's tough. In life, you fail. In life, you succeed. It happens at all times. You just have to stand strong. You have to enjoy. You have to face your failures.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the most important things I had to learn.
Yeah. I mean, Malakisto, I said to people that will take them through the steps, and you talked about owning your story. And you and I have talked a lot about owning your story. And I remember I had been encouraging you a lot not to be ashamed of who you are and what you have gone through. Never be ashamed. And I want to say to people out there, never be ashamed. Malakisto was excluded twice at VETS and at Central, at the private JIT, the TVET in Johannesburg. Now he's at Central TVET and he's what? But there's no point, there's no value, there's no gain in being ashamed of the fact that you got good metric results, you went to VETS, you excluded, you went to TVET, you excluded. You even lost the opportunity for NSFAS because NSFAS said, once you got your act together, you want to go back. NSFAS said, asiyingeni indaba yakho. And those are the consequences of what happens when wheels come off. And it's always good to have a family that can help you, So you owned your story. You owned your story. And you keep saying that you even had to go home. You had escaped from home to go to Pretoria, but you had to come back to Mpumalanga, to your home. The people that you were ashamed of, that you thought they will criticize you, they will laugh, you had to come back and face them and own the story. And that's what helped in your rising again for the second time and then coming back to my sister and say, I found my way, I'm back, take me back, Mama. and now you are back. And I have to say to you, by the way, Malakisto, I've said this, but I want to say it publicly. The song that you produced, that you wrote whilst you were in the streets, and the song that you wrote now in your comeback, the one in your comeback is better. I know everyone at home also liked the other one. Me, I like this one. The one of the rising up is amazing, right? And in my view, it also shows it's a sign of the place where you are at, because you wrote this song, but you're also doing it with people that you are studying with. You're collaborating with people, your friends that you are studying with, who you would have never met had you not gone through this journey and find yourself at Central TVET. You are now with those people that you're collaborating with and you are producing this good music with because you've gone through the journey. So it's wonderful to have you here owning your story. But someone wrote here that Malakisto must start his own YouTube channel. Yeah, someone says that, but it's almost like they have heard me talk to you, because I said to you, must tell your story. You must tell your story on TikTok, episode by episode, because it's an amazing story. And your story is an unfolding story. And it's gonna get better and better with time.
Yes. Yeah, actually, I just want to take this opportunity to say, ma'am, thank you very much. Actually, you encouraged me to tell my story, to own my story. And when I started doing that, that's when I started become more lively, because someone was listening to my story and they would say, wow, your story is inspiring, because there's someone who's out there who can't tell their story because they are in shame.
Yes.
But when you tell your story and you take up you don't care about how shameful you feel about it, you're also giving them that room to come out of their shell and say, you know what, it happens. So what?
So what?
So to everyone, there is a YouTube. They can follow me on my TikTok channel, that's where I tell my story. As well on YouTube, I'm also telling my story there. Maybe I'll share the link afterwards.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to say thank you very much, ma'am. So you inspired me to tell the story. And it's not only freed somebody else, but it has also freed me. You know? It gave me an opportunity and a room to grow. When you tell your story, there's so many people around you who want to hear more, who want to actually know how you overcame this and this and this and this and that. So I think that's one of the reasons why we have to go through struggles in life, and we overcome and we are able to uplift others who are going to be going through that.
Thank you very much, like Malakisto, for coming online with me. Really, really appreciate it. We're gonna find a way to get this song out. Maybe the day you launch, maybe that weekend we must get onto this session and share the song, because I think people have to hear it. So thank you so much for joining me. I want to do my concluding remarks. You can check out when you're ready, Malakisto. But here's the thing, guys. I mean, the crux of the message of bouncing back is that you should never be ashamed. Never be ashamed. Never be ashamed of your story, of what happened to you, or who saw what, who knows what. Never be ashamed. That's just one point in your life. Your life is way longer than that one bit, right? Never be ashamed. Own it. Own it and tell it. Remember, what makes Lucky's story powerful and what makes Nsa's story that we told last week powerful is the fact that it's a story of victory. Because it doesn't end at a point of a low that, oh, I don't know what to do, oh, donate for me, oh, give me 150 rand, oh, whatever. It's a story of victory that says, I'm taking the bull by the horns. It's not easy. It's tough. I lost opportunities. I've lost NSFAS. I've lost time. But I have a song. And I'm doing well now in my studies. And I'm going to succeed. It's a story of victory. So the fact that you are experiencing failure now, or a setback now, or a disappointment now, does not mean that the rest of your life will be failure, disappointment, or setback. That failure or disappointment or setback actually is giving you an opportunity to bounce higher and end on a high. So don't give up. Remember that your life is meant to be a story of victory. So claim that victory, right? Claim that victory and listen to people whose lives you admire. Do not listen to the critiques of losers, people who will always criticize you, people you don't even want to be like. But you are letting their opinions shape how you react to your story. Never do that. I mean, you don't want to be like those people anyway. If they gave you an opportunity to swap lives, you probably wouldn't take it anyway. So don't rather listen or hear people who you want to be like. And those are the people that you follow. So thank you very much for joining me. Join me again next week. Remember, I offer mentoring for individuals. If you want mentoring for a group, slide into my DMs and tell me your company you want mentoring for a group. I do mentoring for entrepreneurs, for young professionals, for academics. Just slide into my DMs. I'll help you. For even young managers, I'm there. I've learned a lot in my journey. And I will tell you the things that I have learned. I'll teach you everything that I wish someone had taught me before I went into management and leadership, before I went into academia, and also as a young professional. So I do for the group, but I also do editing of thesis. Are you doing a master's or a PhD? You want someone to edit your thesis? I do that. Slide into my DMs, and we will give you the link so that you can apply for, you can ask for us to edit your thesis. Here's the thing. You want an experienced professor, a B1 rated scientist to edit your thesis. They will tell you the truth, and they are on your side. They are not your examiner. They are your editor, and they will help you proofread and give you feedback before you submit, not after you fail, before you submit. So check us out on my socials, and we'll give you information. Otherwise, slide into my DMs. We'll give you information for the mentoring program and for the editing, and you can take us up on that. Have a good week. Remember, you have only one life. Live it well. All the best. Bye-bye.